Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, Intel says TikTok is over. AMD Fury benchmarks the Viper of mini ITX cases. Malventano talks StableBit and picking a new raid. And whoa, Google's got neural networks. It's all coming up on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 324, recorded July 16th, 2015. Intel is slowing down, people. This episode is brought to you by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your home. Get $25 off the Ring Video Doorbell when you go to ring.com/Twitch. Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, most delightful, most engaging, and this week, most storage-filled news and hardware on the interwebs, here or in any known universe ever. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Patrick Norton, joined this week by Mr. Alan Malventano, a.k.a. Mr. Storage. How you doing, man?
How's it going?
It's good. Ryan's...
I'm covering for the boss. He is at a hospital with wife and child.
Everybody okay?
Yeah, everybody's good. They're just making sure everything is good before mother and daughter are returned, or
released.
Actually,
sprung.
The daughter gets moved for the first time to the home from the hospital.
That's exciting. Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Windows 10, we're done with beta.
Kind of, sort of, mostly. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's basically it, right? It's supposed to be this build that's like, there's a 10.240, and then it's just going to be that plus like some whatever fixes they do in the next couple weeks, supposedly.
Yeah. The changes, it's funny, like Scott wrote the article up on PC Per, and he did an update at 6:15 p.m. on July 14th. The change is now in effect. Go into the Insiders page at insider.windows.com. Is the PC link disabled, and a message explaining that you're too late. So, no more. See you at the RTM. 29th is the big day. So, I'm excited. I am very, very excited about that one. And so far, so good. But I actually got a chance to talk to Microsoft next week. So if you have any questions on that one, fire them out to @PatrickNorton or hit him at ask@techthing.com. So I'll be taking like all of the Windows questions I get from everybody and kind of bundling them together when I get to sit down with Microsoft and see what's coming.
Sweet.
Intel confirms that TikTok shattering Kaby Lake processor as Moore's Law faltered. Such a dramatic title for Ars Technica. You're heartbroken. 10 nanometers is pushed out to like 2017. So basically, Intel confirmed that they're going to do a third generation. This is just yesterday. They're going to do a third generation of 14 nanometer processors. 10 nanometer manufacturing is pushed out to 2017. And essentially, the glories of the TikTok cycle are done for now. There will be a talk, but it's mostly just minor architectural improvements.
They're just going to stretch them out further.
Yeah.
But I mean, it won't be the same rapid pace because eventually, you kind of run out of atoms.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I was talking about, where is it? I don't know if you see. I was on the Tested podcast earlier, and I was talking with Will about it, and part of me's like, this is what happens when there's nobody challenging Intel at the top of the performance market. They slow down, prices will go up, dogs and cats will be sleeping together, fire raining from the sky. And then part of me is like, most people I don't know can't even use all of the capabilities of a quad-core i5. So why should Intel kill itself to push everything to a 10 nanometer process to produce additional power that the vast majority of their user base can't actually run anything to take advantage of? But so basically it was shareholder call yesterday. Skylake was to be succeeded by Cannon Lake. Basically the same architecture, new 10 nanometer processor, new 10 nanometer process, and they just stretched it out. Because 10 nanometer, 14 nanometer was enormously difficult for Microsoft to make work. 10 nanometer is looking just as difficult, And the thing, it was funny because we were talking about it. I think we were talking about it last week on Twitch with Ryan. Was like that 7 nanometer chip that IBM put out. It was literally like handcrafted, old timey style with wafers and a forge and a bunch of people individually laying transistors. I kid. But it's 7 nanometer is a ways out, and 10 nanometer now is farther out than we thought it would be. So we'll see.
Yeah, you might be closer to on point than you might think. Like that wafer was certainly not produced in the mode where they're just pumping wafers through the fab usually, right?
Yeah, because the equipment does not exist. So they were literally
yeah,
one wafer
they
at
had
a time.
they had to fine tune everything as the process was going. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Probably half the stuff they were using couldn't actually go that small. They were just making it work with what they had.
It's crazy pants. Apple's announced a new iPod Touch, which is pretty badass, right up to the point where it has no GPS, and that makes me want to cry. 128 gigabyte SKU is a big deal if you want all of the storage like I do. Bigger deal probably is the 8 megapixel camera, and more importantly, the A8 processor. So still a 4-inch Retina display, 1136 by 640, that A8 processor with an M8 Motion coprocessor. Very similar specs in a lot of ways to the iPhone 5S in terms of the camera. 8 megapixel iSight camera, f2.4 aperture, which is a little slower. Should be a better flash on that. It's got burst mode, tap to focus, all the usual stuff. 1080p, 30 frames per second recording, 120 frames per second slow-mo video. Standard low-res FaceTime camera, 802.11 ABG and AC, Bluetooth 4.1. Should be really, really good as a portable device. It should be ridiculously fast compared to an older iPod Touch. I just wish it had a GPS receiver built in.
Yeah, I think if they were going to go that far, then GPS receivers now are all built into the phone chipsets.
Yeah.
So it's probably was a pretty decent cost-saving measure. And it's also a reason to, get someone to convince them to shift over to the phone, right? Like if you absolutely positively have to have the GPS, well, we make this iPhone thing.
Well, probably more an iPad mini, but...
yeah, that's true. But I like the size. I like how they've kept the size, that smaller iPhone 5 footprint. And also it's probably thinner, although you can't tell from those pictures, but I would imagine that is probably a decent amount thinner than the 5S even.
Mm-hmm. No, it should be. I mean, it looks like a fantastic piece of hardware. And if you whether you're gaming or whether you're doing video or something like that, this should be more than up to the task. I'm really kind of tempted because we wanted to pick up for some travel we're doing later this year. We wanted to get iPad minis for the boys, and now I'm kind of tempted to do the iPad Touch. Should be good to go either way. Oh, look, the Bad Elf is still making the, it's for 30-pin dock connectors. Rats. So close, and yet so far. So you need a lightning GPS adapter. Oh, they have one now. It's $130. Ouch. Well, there goes that idea. Do you see the Google research article on neural networks?
I was looking at it a little bit before we started recording. This looks like some really interesting, cool stuff. Actually.
Yeah, I don't feel remotely even in the neighborhood of being qualified to discuss this.
Yeah, neither am I actually.
But the idea is when you teach a neural network, which is essentially a neural network is a collection. I'll just read Wikipedia. Is a family of statistical learning models inspired by biological neural networks, i.e., the nerves in your brain that can depend upon a large number of inputs and are generally unknown. Artificial neural networks are generally presented as systems of interconnected neurons which send messages to each other. These connections have numeric weights and can be tuned based on experience, making neural nets adaptive to inputs and capable of learning. So basically, artificial intelligence, self-educating artificial intelligence. And what you do when you want a neural network to learn something is you give it a billion examples of something, and the Google research blog post says, quote, "We train an artificial neural network by showing it millions of training examples and gradually adjusting the network parameters until it gives the classifications we want. Network typically consists of 10 to 30 stacked layers of artificial neurons. Each image is fed into the input layer, which then talks to the next layer until eventually the output layer is reached. The network's answer comes to this final output layer." One of the challenges of neural network. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I like how, like, if you look like halfway down this article, it's freaking awesome because they're doing like the same thing a kid does with clouds, right? Except they're using a computer. If you scroll down a little bit, they're showing like, here's some clouds, and what do they look like, right? And it's like maybe another page down from where you're at, Zach. Oh, another one, and so it's like, oh, what do you see? And like you have a neural network behaving as like a child would if you basically tell it to overanalyze the images, right? Because obviously that should just be like sky with clouds, but it's picking out like dogs and snails and birds and fish and stuff. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it's nuts because when you look at some of the images in there, like what they noticed is like neural networks that were trained to discriminate between different kinds of images have quite a bit of the information needed to generate images. So if so the idea was like they were actually looking, they asked it to make a banana, so they were making these crazy patterns. Or there's a picture like an ant, a measuring cup of starfish. And the answer to that is like, why is this important? Well, we train networks, and I'm quoting directly from Google Research's post. We train networks by simply showing them many examples of what we want them to learn, hoping they extract the essence of the matter and learn to ignore what doesn't matter. But how do you check that the network has correctly learned the right features? So it can help to visualize network's representation of a fork. And, for example, if you start scrolling down from there, so these are the examples of the output. You notice in the case of the parachute, there's a person hanging under it, and they're a little vague. The screws, it's kind of hard to tell that there's screws in that picture on the right. But if you scroll down to the next collection of images, it's really trippy because one of the neural nets thought a dumbbell, like all dumbbells, had arms sticking out of them. Which sounds really silly, but if every time you see a dumbbell, it's being held by an arm, then you might assume that arms were part of dumbbells. So it was interesting. Like the stuff you started looking at with I think they're hartebeests. I'm not sure. What you're looking at is patterns that were created by the lower layers of the neural network, because, quote, those layers are sensitive to the basic features such as edges and their orientations, and they start to look absolutely wild as you start going through these. It's pretty crazy stuff. The images are fantastic or slightly horrifying.
Yeah. It is like its own form of art, kind of.
Yes,
like that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you scroll down a little bit farther, you'll see the one where it looks at they applied the idea of like over interpreting an image. That's where the idea is where it started seeing stuff in the clouds. They applied that sort of technique to images, and what's crazy is if you look at the tree, trees became buildings, the horizons became the towering pagodas, leaves turned into birds and insects. It's really interesting. They're calling, quote, "This technique gives us a qualitative sense of the level of abstraction that a particular layer has achieved in its understanding of images. We call this technique inceptionism in reference to the neural net architecture used, not the movie. See our inceptionism gallery for more pairs of images and their processed results, plus some cool video animations." It's, it's far beyond my intelligence to try to explain this stuff. The inceptionism gallery is pretty fantastic and slightly horrifying and kind of crazy because you start realizing that maybe androids do dream of electric sheep. The Seattle city skyline in that linked collection of images is pretty crazy. It's also funny because everything starts to look like Edward Munch, and then they have an Edward Munch painting in there. But some of the images are absolutely beautiful, and some of them are absolutely freakish. So if you're interested in artificial intelligence and learning and all that stuff, it is certainly worth your time to take a look at that article on the Google Research blog. So I just thought it was fascinating. Plus the idea of like just trying to figure out how you program a neural network is still just mind-boggling to me. Oh,
over both of our heads.
So are you currently using any VR tools?
I have toyed with the Oculus dev kit. I think the second version of the dev kit that we have at the office. I don't get motion sick from using it unless I'm using a thing that's supposed to make you motion sick. And then I get very motion sick because that really is trippy. But yeah, it's cool stuff. But I just wish there was a better way to do like the input stuff, because you're still sitting at a desk using a keyboard and a mouse when everything else is another reality, right? And your hands are still sitting on a keyboard and mouse, which is actually quite unsettling, because if you turn yourself or you get mispositioned and you go to like, you think you would see your hands in front of you, but you don't. And now you're just kind of like blindly, you can see stuff, but you're just still in the real world blindly reaching around for like, oh crap, where'd the mouse go? Where's the joystick? Where's whatever? Which kind of goes along with kind of goes along with this article. Looks like Facebook's making some more deals for input.
Yeah, they've bought Israeli-based gesture control company Pebbles Limited. This is up in the Wall Street Journal Digits blog, and they essentially, what makes it's gesture control software, but unlike most gesture identification technologies, Pebbles enables users to see images of their own arms and hands in their virtual reality display. Pebbles technology, the journal reports, can show unique features like clothing, scars, or items held in one hand. So that's from what I've talked to the people that spent more time in virtual environments than I have, are really excited about the idea. That video is really fantastic when you look at him holding up the hands in front of the gloves, and essentially it makes it that much more immersive.
It looks sort of like what was that? The Leap, wasn't that the one that came out for the Mac, or at least the Mac at first, where you just put that little box on your desk and it just kind of reads everything in 3D. Looks like the same kind of thing, but it's probably just part of the mask itself, like part of the headset itself, instead of just something that sits on the desk. There's that Eve Valkyrie trailer that I'm in love with. That cannot be a thing soon enough.
It's going to be interesting to see where it all ends up by the end of this year.
Yeah, Ken actually got to see that in person. He got to put a headset on and watch that Eve Valkyrie trailer, like from the aspect of he was moving his head around and looking at all the different scenery as it was playing through that sequence, instead of just what we're forced to see just by watching a video of whatever that person's view was. That must have been awesome. I was jealous.
So jealous.
So jealous.
Sapphire Radeon R9 Fury 4GB review with Crossfire results. I'm pretty sure we didn't have this in time for last week's recording, which was on July 9th.
Right, we did not.
What did Ryan have to say about this? Was he pretty stoked?
So this is basically a Fury X, but replace water with air cooling and remove some of the stream processors and downclock the core speed a little bit. It's not a huge nerfing, so to speak, but it does make the thing a little bit slower overall compared to a Fury X. But this is not supposed to be competing with what the Fury X competes with, which is like a 980 Ti. This is more along the lines of competing against the 980. It's like a regular 980. And in that respect, it ends up coming out, I want to say it was like about 10% faster or so. I mean, obviously there's different, pluses and minuses depending on which game you're looking at and what the level of the AMD drivers have progressed to as far as support for, whatever those new titles are. But overall, it's like about 10% faster than a 980, and it costs about 10% more. It comes in $50 more than a regular GTX 980. So as far as where they've placed it in the market, as far as pricing goes, it seems to be sitting in the right place. Makes sense. Doesn't cost too much, doesn't cost too little. And it's air cooled, right? It doesn't actually, one thing I noted as Ryan was testing this is it is very aggressive about spinning the fans down, like as soon as you remove the load from the GPU. So like what you might be used to with a regular air-cooled GPU is that you exiting a game and then everything is quiet in your room, but then that's when you notice that your GPU fans are still going full speed, right? Because the GPUs are still hot from you were just running a game. This one, it's as if the GPU load is a factor in how we think this is specifically to how Sapphire tuned this card, but the load is like an input to that formula that figures out how fast to spin the fans. It's not just the GPU temperatures. So we still had like really relatively high GPU temperatures while exiting a game, because it was basically the temperature it was sitting at while the game was loading the GPU. And as soon as we exit the game, the fans would immediately spin down. GPU would still be hot, but of course, if you are aware that there's no more load on the GPU, then you don't need the fans to cool it that quickly. Like it'll eventually cool down slowly, on its own, even if the fans are running at a very slow speed. In our case, like the fans would basically just turn off, like as soon as you exited the game, because it was like, hey, I can handle this level of load in the long run without the fans running. So I'm just going to turn them off. I know that the card will cool off. And it does. You have to give it a little while, but interesting. I wish more GPUs would do that, right? Because that's the only time I ever notice. I used to be diehard water cooling, and now I've switched everything over to air just for simplicity's sake. I want to be able to upgrade my system without involving plumbing. So since doing that, that's the only time I really notice a lot of air noise coming out of my PC is after quitting a game. And this card totally fixes that too. It's pretty cool.
Fixing it is really cool. Sorry, I'm dropping a viewer question from Twitter down there. Motorola's got an event on July 28th, which I'm really curious about. The Verge and everybody else on the planet seems to be writing about it. Live stream 7/28/15, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard. Which is going to be a little early for me. That'll be 6 a.m. for me. But we expect, or I should say the Verge expects Moto X and Moto G updates. Verge notes that the Moto 360 is also due for a refresh. And they say Motorola gives a bit of a hint with its XGX signature, which seems like it's pointed towards the Moto X and the Moto G. And nobody really knows what the relationship status comment is on that invitation.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I got to say that the Moto G is, I think, the best deal on a sub $200 phone. The Moto E, outside of the camera, the Moto G outside of the camera is pretty fantastic. The Moto E is if you want the least expensive phone out there from a reputable manufacturer, that's by far the lead for my money on Android.
There was we don't have it on the notes, but there was a Commodore branded smartphone recently. Did you see that? It was like a rebranded overseas, like an obscure brand, but then they slapped like a Commodore brand on it and put like the Amiga and Commodore emulators as part of the build.
It's a Commodore Pet, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's Commodore Pet smartphone. Sorry, I have a soft spot in my heart for Commodore because that's like my first computer was a Commodore 64. So
I just thought of it as being the link bait of telephones.
Basically, but I still had the chuckle looking at the specs, because if you compare modern day smartphone specs to a Commodore, right? I mean, you're talking 64 kilobytes of RAM, and like a Commodore 64's clock frequency was 1 megahertz. Right. Megahertz, not gigahertz.
No, I heard you.
1,000th of a gigahertz, right? So, yeah, that's pretty funny. Anyway,
oh my goodness, we've been taking a look a lot at the smaller form factor cases.
Yeah,
mini ITX cases, just because they're so compelling. The Deepcool GamerStorm Tri-Stellar, which I probably should have put in the link for the PC Pro article on there. It really does look unusual. Kit Gear's got the write up on it. It looks like a Viper. But it's I just dropped the link in there for you, Zach. It's pretty crazy when you look at cable organization and the way the machine is set up. Kit Guru did a really fantastic series of starting with head-on, then rotating the case and pulling the panels off the case so you could see just how crazy this thing really gets. Quote, "It is a physically imposing design that requires a fair amount of desk space, but nothing that you see prepares you for the weight of the thing. It weighs 16 kilograms and it comes out of the package. It's over 32 pounds. Yeah, and as you look at that, they put like the GPU in one, the motherboard in another wing of this devices. And Kit Guru notes that there are limitations about the hardware you can fit, but they are not as restrictive as you think, above like a mini ITX motherboard and a single graphics card. I don't know if you can go to one of the pictures down there at the bottom of there where you can see all the components inside of it. It is pretty crazy. You know, one 5.25-inch drive bay. You know, it'll do a 120 millimeter radiator for the CPU. Two 3.5-inch internal drive bays, three 2.5-inch internal drive bays. I thought it was a hoot. And if you want to get the full story, go over to kitguru.com and take a look at that. They've got some pretty cool case reviews over there. It is distinctive. I think it falls well into the very, very distinctive design choices. So if you're looking for something different. Was Lee on the podcast yesterday? Does Robotech do the podcast?
Well, whoops, I had the mic up. No, he usually doesn't join us on the podcast. He comes into town every so often because he does live close by.
Okay, because I noticed there was a review of the Corsair RM850i, fully modular 850 watt power supply.
Yeah.
Corsair's got a lot of power supplies.
Yeah, it's something like 30-something models of power supplies. They pretty much filled every like $10 increment.
34 different models from the 350 watt VS350 all the way up to the King of the Hill 1500 watt AX1500i, and I am directly quoting Lee on that one.
Yeah, and this one is only like $10 more expensive than the equivalent wattage, but without the extra features.
Right.
Basically. Yeah, and I mean, Lee always does an awesome job with the power supply reviews for us. He's, he has all this. He's an electrical engineer, like just by trade, so he has all this awesome test gear, and can actually load down the power supply to all the different levels. I'm kind of envious of his electrical test bench setup that he has. But overall, he was pretty impressed. I think the only con he had about this particular power supply was that the fan profile wasn't like, it kind of either spun the fan really slow or just kept it off even all the way up to like the medium power levels. And in other words, it was able to, power supply ran kind of noticeably hot, like in the mid range, right? But the counter to that is, hey, it's got a 7-year warranty. So
yeah,
I mean, if it doesn't fry in 7 years, chances are you're good for, a few more years there. You probably, you're at least covered up to the 7-year point. So if it did run hot and that was the cause of a failure, you're covered, right?
Which is pretty fantastic.
We use Corsair power supplies all over the office. I have one in the PC that I'm using right now. Like they're good stuff generally. Yeah.
Sorry, I was working on more tweets for Mr. Malventano. Mr. Malventano. It's a pretty funny way of saying it. The other thing it linked up is Hard OCP followed PC Per. We're talking about power supply. The Seasonic No Silent 750 watt power supply review. Quote, Paul Johnson is a writer, Kyle Bennett, of course, editing it over at Hard OCP. Seasonic is without a doubt the best computer PSU designer and builder in North America. In our opinion, it has continually made award-winning enthusiast class power supply units, which is simply not easy in today's market. You're looking at the PC Per article over there. It is silent. It is 750 watts. It is pretty badass. Yeah. Hard OCP, PC Per loved it. They do a 750 watt version, a 1050 watt version. The marketing kind of fluff on this one. The unconventional exterior of our newly designed Snow Silent 750 power supply is surely to surprise many. Undeniably, the stylishly white, sleek finish looks very different from what people are used to seeing on a Seasonic product. It is, however, the top performance built into this unit that truly takes it to a higher level. Customers wanting to build a quiet gaming home theater or office computer will be delighted with the advanced features of top quality, 80 plus platinum certified, fully modular power supply. And the performance seems to be badass. PC Per did their review a while ago. It's the third. It's funny. Hard OCP says it's the third 750 watt unit they have seen from Seasonic. The second, which fits into a position where it is the member of the flagship or very close to it. Excellent build quality. Stunning is what they went for. The load testing results for the Snow Silent 750 watt are, hold on, I'm looking for the thesaurus for the proper adjective: awesome, amazing, shocking, wonderful, stunning. 12-volt rail increased by just 0.03 volts during testing, while the 3.3-volt rail dropped by just 0.01 volt, and the 5-volt rail didn't move. Quote, the best voltage regulation we have ever seen by a power supply, unquote. It is pretty badass. It is silent. There is no fans. Well, I take it back. The Snow Silent uses a floating bearing fan instead of a ball bearing fan. The Snow Silent 750 watt was not audible in our load testing environment in any of our tests, even when hunting for the fan noise. So, sorry, first I thought it was fanless, probably because of the silent name. But
yeah, you
editor's
probably
choice,
might think it's fanless.
It's pretty, yeah. That's pretty excited. If you need,
it does look nice.
Cars.
If you're into that seems to be a trend lately with like the white or slightly off like bone white PC components. Mm-hmm. Again, hopefully these won't yellow over time like the old ones did. I think we're safe.
I think we're safe.
The old plastic PC cases where 15 years later it's just an orange yellow PC case.
Oh my goodness. I was just amazed at like how stable the voltage is on that. That's pretty badass. That's pretty badass. We were looking at the Synology DS1515 Plus on Tech Thing a week or two ago and took that as an opportunity to kind of generally discuss what a NAS is and why you might want to buy one instead of build one. And we got a good tweet here from at Sword Edge. David tweets, at Malventano, how do you select a good NAS RAID?
So is he talking about like once you've already chosen your NAS, you're choosing the level of RAID? Is that
what's an interesting thought, right? Because it's funny because Synology's pretty simple, but you can do RAID 5, you can do Synology's RAID option, and that's just looking at it. There's so many things you can configure on a RAID. Once, even if you're like building a free NAS, there's 87,000 things to configure. If you're building, if you're setting up, like a Synology RAID, there's considerably fewer decisions to make, but there's still a fair number of decisions you're offered inside of the machine.
Yeah. No, that's true. And it all just boils down to like, how many bays your NAS has, what capacity drives you have, and how much stuff you want to be able to stick on it, and how reliable do you want it to be, right? You could just go crazy and go RAID 0 and basically just make it so any drive fails, your data's toast, pretty much. But it'll be faster, and you'll have all of the capacity of all the drives that you plugged in, right? Or, you can, if you have more than a 2-bay, you can start using things like RAID 5, where you're just donating a drive worth of capacity to the cause of being able to handle any one drive failing. The typical thing for just the simple like 2-bay NAS is just a mirror, but then again, you're just donating one drive to the cause, right? You have to have an extra drive to be able to handle one drive going away. So yeah, that's all it boils down to. We had a similar question from at that actual guy. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I was cutting and pasting that one in.
Yeah, so he says, considering the issues with RAID 5 and greater than 1 terabyte drives because of unrecoverable read errors, what is a parity-based alternative? Well, actually, I kind of have a counter to that, and that's as long as you're using drives with TLER, which is time-limited error recovery, which is pretty much any company that brands a drive as like a NAS hard drive these days. Basically, the hard drive will time out itself quicker if it comes across a read error. It won't sit there for 30 seconds to a minute and try to just keep hammering away at the disk and try to read that data. It'll give up gracefully. Basically, it'll say, "Look, I tried for 7 seconds or 5 seconds, can't get it," and then it reports back to whoever requested it, be it a RAID card or a NAS or a PC, and it's able to send a command back and says, "Hey, I couldn't read that. Like, this is a bad sector." As long as you have a decent NAS or a decent RAID card, like just, any kind of reputable brand, chances are, if you're in the middle of doing what's called a rebuild, which is the thing you do after a drive failed in a RAID 5, you plug in your replacement drive, a rebuild starts, and the theory, well, not the theory, but like the thing that will happen that this guy's worried about is that if you have an array full of like 10 6 terabyte drives or something like that, just statistically, you might get one read error from the rest of those drives if you just did a replacement of one of the drives, right? So you're trying to read from 9 other 6 terabyte drives front to back. Chances are, one of them might have a hiccup. It's an awful lot of data there, right? Well, as long as the drives have that sort of protection, that, TLER kind of protection, they will just tell the RAID card or whatever the device is doing the rebuild, "Hey, I can't read this." And the rebuild will still be able to continue, is the key. Now, you will have lost a very tiny slice. And by tiny, I mean like you're talking one sector out of, 6 terabytes worth of sectors, which is an awfully big number. You would still have lost a slice. You would have still had, potentially corrupted the middle of a JPEG or something somewhere, that was sitting on there, or the middle of some movie or something. Who knows? Whatever that data was that happened to be in that one little slice. But you didn't lose all your data, right? The rebuild still continued. It was able to finish. If it's a RAID, like a hardware RAID card, it will put that entry in a log. It'll tell you what spot was the bad spot. And then if you want, you can go, and if you have access to the right kind of tools, you can figure out what file was sitting in that spot on your drive, and then, kind of work backwards from there and go, okay, this is my bad file. I need to go fix that later. But, all is not lost is my point. RAID 5 is safe as long as you're using, TLER-based drives. I would still recommend RAID 6 if you're going to go very huge on the amount of data, because that way you can still have another drive be able to fail completely in the middle of the rebuild from the first one, and you're still covered. So it's kind of like, when RAID 6, you have one drive fail, that becomes RAID 5. So you're still covered, so to speak, until that rebuild completes, and then you're back to RAID 6. What else we got?
We should take a moment to thank our sponsors over at Ring. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard about it yet, you should have heard about Ring at this point if you've been watching various TWiCH programs. You've been watching Twitch. The Ring video doorbell. Over 95% of home break-ins happen during the day. It's when people are at work. It makes it easy to kick in a door, sneak around, see if somebody's home. Burglars, Ring says, almost always start by ringing the doorbell to see if someone's home before pillaging your possessions. And with the Ring video doorbell, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. Basically, there's motion detection built in there. It's pretty slick, and it's pretty. There, you can see them mounted right there. You can run power from your house. You can use an onboard battery. You'll only need to charge approximately once a year. Ryan Shrout has gotten one in and installed it. He says the fit and finish of the box and installation process is very sophisticated. There's a driver bit, masonry bit, a level. Everything's in the box. All your tools you need. It's all very well packaged, Ryan said. All you had to do was download the Ring app, create the account. There's a quick setup. And then that connected it to your wireless network, and you were done. Most importantly, he says the latency seems pretty low from the time someone hits the button to when it rings on his phone. Audio latency is pretty good. So he's pretty excited to have that on there. There's a motion detection built into Ring. So even if someone doesn't ring the doorbell, you can still know that somebody was up there and try to get a shot of them. Ring says it's like caller ID for your home. Super easy installation, super simple because they put everything in the box. Put your mind at ease and protect your home with a video doorbell. Time Magazine named one of the top 10 gadgets of 2014. And because you're watching us here at Twitch right now, you can get the Ring Video Doorbell for only $174. It's $25 off the normal price. Protect your home and have peace of mind with Ring. Go to ring.com/Twitch. That's ring.com/TWiCH. We want to thank Ring for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. And that's ring.com/TWiCH to get the Ring Video Doorbell at a discount and find out what's going on in front of your door when you're not there, or even when you are there, which may be a lot more important, depending on what's going on in your neighborhood.
When he opened the box, I was surprised. They basically, you've got everything. It even comes with a little level.
Yeah.
So it kind of reminded me of like how a Nest thermostat installation goes, where they try to put absolutely everything you could possibly need in the box, and it's all very simply laid out and just, yep.
So we had another question on the Twitters at Rob PPJ tweets, what's the best way to run Crash Plan on a Drobo 5N? And I would brazenly assume that would be one of the Drobo ports. I know there was a GitHub project to bring Crash Plan onto the Drobo, but that was a while ago.
I think it is out there, though. It's not like you can't get it straight from Drobo as far as the plugin for it, but I was pretty sure there was a way. I think a buddy of mine has a 5N, and he was even writing some of his own plugins for it. So I would imagine that there's a Crash Plan plugin out there for it.
Yep.
I think worst case, you can always, you found it?
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny, but it's worth mentioning, like, if you're buying a NAS box, whether you're looking at Synology or Drobo or building something like an Unraid or a free NAS or purchasing a Thecus or any of the other ones that are out there, you really need to make sure it supports the apps you want to use. If you don't want to spend a lot of quality time figuring out how to make it happen.
I mean, you could just, worst case, I think you could just point the Crash Plan desktop app, like just at a shared folder, couldn't you? Like if you're trying to make it like a very, if you're just used to Windows, for example, and you don't want to have to mess with the interface on the Drobo, you could just kind of like work around it, right? Just map the Drobo or map whatever the folder is you want as like a separate drive letter and just point Crash Plan at that drive letter. And you have to have that PC running for it to work, but hey, at least it'll work. Should. That would be nice. And that gives you your 1 in your 3-2-1 situation. One copy offsite. Yes, you want the one. Definitely want the ones.
Any last questions in the chat room?
Yeah. Where's the chat?
I should probably also ask you, how's StableBit been? Because I was picking your brain.
StableBit's good. I might start shifting over to the folder level duplication setting, because right now I have it set to duplicate everything ×2.
Nice.
And I may have accidentally filled 12 6-terabyte hard drives to the brim by accident. Initially when I built it, because my RAID of 3-terabyte drives in my actual PC was full, and I was like, okay, well, let me try to shift over to this. And then I went to these 12 drives and like built this whole thing, and then dumped all of the, emptied this system onto it. And then I found all of the other like random drives. Like my wife has some external hard drives from, God knows how long ago, just things with pictures on it and like SD cards. And basically I was just like, this system over here was like the vortex of data. Like everything in the house was just all being dumped onto it. And I very quickly almost filled it to the brim. So I'm going to have to like upgrade it some more. But it is pretty cool that you can, do just a folder level choosing of, what you want your redundancy to be. So if I have something that's really important, I can just say, hey, I want 3 copies of this. And it will just automatically distribute each file in that folder across 3 separate drives. It'll just make sure they're on 3 separate ones. And now the software takes care of like what is where. But, the data, I just love the fact that the data is there on individual partitions, right? It's just regular NTFS partitioned hard drives. This is just a layer that sits above them so that it's presented to you as just one drive letter. Right. And then, it works. Windows sees it just as if it was a regular NTFS partition, granted, like a huge one, but
Right.
It's still a regular partition. You can do whatever you want. You can share it just like a regular network share. It's available to the house. So like, any way that you would, be sharing any other kind of folder or anything you could do with any typical folder on a Windows box. So yeah, I like it. I just need to get some more hard drives.
I can't believe you filled all those already. How expensive is it? Or I should say, it's fairly inexpensive. It's like
stable bit drive
$30.
pool. It's like $20 or $30. It's in that range, and you don't just get one license; you get 3 licenses. I think for that for that price.
Free. Oh, test drive a free fully functional copy for 30 days. $29.95 to buy, not to die.
Yeah. and I'm pretty sure it's more than one system that they let you license. And it's not like an archaic kind of, like, it's very simple. It's just like you just have your account, which is almost like almost looks like a Windows product code, and you just plug that into the software, and it just like activates it. And then if you're about to do a reinstall or something, and you don't want to have to deal with tech support or whatnot, you just have to kind of make a mental note to like deactivate that copy on that system before you're going to do that reinstall. And then that way you don't have to worry about dealing with their support or anything like that in case you had to reset something. But of course that option is there if you need to. But yeah, it's been like super, super simple for me, at least. You are still limited in speed though. Like, it does do like acceleration. So if you're reading data and it's something that's redundant times 2, you're going to read it from 2 drives at the same time. It actually kind of does striping, like a software version of striping. So you do get 2 times hard drive speed, or whatever times you have the data, mirrored across. So it is kind of good there, but like the write speed, of course, is limited to the speed of any single drive in the array. So it's not as fast as like a RAID 5 on like a hardware RAID card that spreads the data across all the disks at the same time and reads back from all of them at the same time. But all I have is like movies and photos and just that kind of stuff sitting on there. It's just the mass storage for the house. It's basically just all the big stuff. Like, where do you put it all? Well, all over there on that thing. And I also like that it doesn't have to be like, it could be, it is a full Windows machine, right? So you can have, I want to do like a media center server, right? I bought a WinTV card and I want to eventually have, have a cable card for it ready to go. I eventually want to migrate all that stuff onto a PC. Well, if this was using one of those Linux-based ones or things where you basically have to dedicate a box to it, I couldn't use it for also other things, right? In this case, I can just throw that hardware at that box that's already doing the stable bit drive pool tasks, because that's not really taxing it much. And I can just add that other stuff to it. And now I just have, that one machine doing all sorts of stuff for me. What else we got in the chat? Anything?
I was so desperate to get my Focusrite to run, I forgot to launch the chat room before this show. So chat room, I apologize to you now.
I'm looking at it. Nothing big standing out right now.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we can wrap it.
Well, thank you so much for making the time for us, Mr. Malventano, and pass our thoughts along to Ryan. I hope he gets to bring everybody home tonight. That would probably make him much happier than it would make me, but it would make me happy. Plus, like, less driving for Ryan would probably be nice.
Yeah.
Anything you can tease that's coming up at PC Per?
So I'm working on a couple things. Ryan's busy with family stuff, but he'll probably be working on a couple things soon. I don't know if there's anything I could tease really, though, unfortunately. I tease my garage that I just finished.
Oh, it's gorgeous. If you are a car person
Zach,
and work on your
car,
car,
that picture?
You want Alan's garage. That's a lift back there in the back right corner.
Yeah, I got tired of rolling. I have rolled under my last car that's supported only by jack stands. Like, that has always just raised the hairs on the back of my neck. And I needed to be able to do that safely. So I did that and kind of used the rest of the excuse to just finish out the garage and be able to actually do work in there instead of just have piles of random crap left over from moving stored in there, which is how it has been for about the past year. So
I just picked up a bunch of 12,000-pound jack stands for a 6,500-pound vehicle, 7,000-pound vehicle.
yeah. Good luck with that. I would not want to crawl under that vehicle.
Wow. Still better than using cinder blocks.
Yeah. Don't use cinder blocks. For those listening at home, don't. That's dangerous.
Oh my goodness!
Not even a trained professionals only thing.
No cinder blocks for that. I got the new. We got Logitech's new wireless K400 Plus on this week. On Tech Thing this week, and quite a bit more going on there. So please check it out, techthing.com. And we're starting a monthly build series. Our patreon.com/techthing is our place where users can directly support the show. And we are having our first, we hit our milestone, and so we're going to do our first build. I'm not sure if it's going to be something Raspberry Pi based or gaming PC based, but we're going to add a monthly build video for our Patreon. So that should be exciting. Maybe we'll do something with StableBit. Or Unraid 6. Unraid 6 is looking really fascinating, but I will talk about that after I've built an Unraid 6 and I find out how easy or not easy it is to get VMs running. Dude, Alan, thank you so much for making the time for us this week and covering for Ryan.
Yeah, no
Ladies
problem.
And gentlemen, if you want to find more This Week in Computer Hardware, go to twit.tv/twitch to find all the links to download the shows and pretty much all of the shows going back several years now. If you want to hear about antiquated hardware, we can make that happen. Although technically it's not an antique; it's only 5 years old. But thank each and every one of you for listening. We'll thank our sponsors over at Ring, the video doorbell, and ring.com/twitch is the place to get that discount. Go learn more there. And that's it. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Alan Malventano.
See you next week on Twitch.